Sarve satta bhavantu sukhitatta. May all beings be well and happy. A chemist who can extract from his heart's element compassion, respect, patience and forgiveness, and of course kindness, can create the atom which is called love. So today in Beyond the Vision, our discussion would be based on metta or loving kindness, and my most veneration goes to Venerable Digale Mahinda Thera and Mr. Raja Kuruppu, and a very warm welcome to you as well, sir, for joining us today. And first of all, I would like to ask you, Dr. Migale Mahinda Thera, what is metta?
Metta is one of the four elements of Brahma Viharas. Brahma Viharas are called divine dwellings, and so the metta is the first one of that four elements, and so I think we could call it one of the important virtues which we translate as universal love or boundless love or friendship or even kindness. I think to the discussion probably we want to later on talked about in relation to karuna, but basically because we could say that there's the idea of friendliness in Buddhism or boundless love in Buddhism.
Exactly, Venerable sir. So metta or loving kindness, as you mentioned, is love or unboundless love towards all beings, which we should actually start from practicing within ourselves, and it is then that we should spread it to the other people as well, to the neutral people as well as the people whom we dislike. So I would like to ask you, sir, what are the main characteristics of metta?
I would like to further elaborate on what the Venerable monk said about metta in general. You see, sometimes it is referred to as the sincere wish for the happiness and well-being of all living beings. Now, Venerable sir, you mentioned about metta being the first factor in Brahma Vihara, the art of noble living. It is said that if we practice these four qualities, you could make life on earth a heaven, because then people will have goodwill towards all others. Now, with regard to metta, you want to know about the characteristics. One of the main characteristics that it is extended to all living beings without any distinction or discrimination. Even the tiniest creature that crawls at our feet is included in this exercise of metta. That is one aspect. Then another aspect is that it is limitless. You don't extend goodwill to a person only up to a limit. See, a person might be doing very, very well. Sometimes after some time, the goodwill may tend to evaporate a little, Venerable sir, because sometimes you think now he is getting too big for his shoes. So that is not expected of the practice of metta. And also you break down all the barriers that exist between persons. So ultimately you extend the same kind of metta to yourself and to all other living beings.
Exactly, sir. Actually, Venerable Buddha Gosa has mentioned that when we start practicing metta or loving kindness, we need to start practicing within ourselves, as I mentioned earlier, practicing goodwill within ourselves and then into the neutral people and of course to the people whom we dislike. So when we talk about metta, something very significant comes to my mind, that is the metta bhavana actually. So I would like to ask you, Venerable sir, how can we start practicing metta bhavana, and what's the significance of metta bhavana when we take into account in practicing metta and achieving the highest bliss?
I think you could call it that metta bhavana is a very simple practice, but also at the same time it's a very difficult practice, because I think Mr. Kuruppu already mentioned that you know, it's kind of boundless, limitless, and the difficulty has to do with the problem of being human, because we are attached so much to us and we always make boundaries and we always make a protective fence for ourselves. And so I think as a bhavana, as a meditation practice, the difficulty is how you extend how you extend your compassion to even to mosquitoes and the bugs and snakes and all sorts of cockroaches that you come to your house, and you know these are real problems.
Exactly, Venerable Sir. Something comes to my mind now. These days, this dengue terror is actually going around the country, and what people think that a mosquito is a small creature, so it's all right to maybe kill a mosquito. But that is not what we teach in Buddhism when it comes to metta or spreading of loving kindness to the beings, isn't it, Venerable Sir?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, these are actually the you mentioned a very complex issue, like taking the dengue as an example. Is it put us in a very difficult situation, and now with the as Buddhism, we completely kind of say that let dengue spread, or with the Buddhism has a kind of more management of those issues. I think these are kind of the difficulties that I think any society, not only Buddhist society, but anybody will come across. But the point is that how we still can maintain loving feeling while managing those issues, you know, how we could control it. But of course there is a better way of doing it rather than killing the dengue mosquito. So if we clean the areas where the mosquitoes can grow, spread, then actually that's the better way. Probably Buddhism will go in that line. I think Buddhism doesn't say that it's okay is various disasters spread. Buddhism doesn't say that. Buddhism says that we have to minimize the violence, we have to minimize the unnecessary destruction caused to all living organisms. That's what Buddhism says. So I think the dengue case is a kind of very difficult one, you know, with the kind of how we react to it immediately or how we react in long term. I think Buddhism will take a long term procedure, say that if we are clean and if we are neat and we are responsible and if we think about other people, we will prevent the circumstances, situations which cause them to grow.
Prevention is always better than cure.
That's right.
If I may intervene to respond to what both you, Buddhima, and the Venerable monk said, this you referred, Buddhima, to as mosquito terror. Yes, but of course we must realize, Venerable Sir, that mosquito has no hatred to us. When compared to a mosquito, we are like giants or like mountains. Mosquito knows by the sense, instinct, that there is food in the human body as much as perhaps in other animal bodies. So the fellow's food is blood. So the fellow is attracted to us, does not have any ill will towards us. So we must appreciate that fact. In fact, I feel very sorry for these mosquitoes, Buddhima, because fellow is trying to go for his food. And then we kill. You see, generally we kill. Now here in this practice also, you have to discipline yourself. Generally, many people, including monks, venerables, I am sorry to say, when there is a mosquito, they immediately whack the fellow. You see. But if you are mindful and have sati, you will become aware. Now the mosquito is biting. And you may, with a wave of your hand, drive the mosquito away.
Or a fan will do.
A fan does it sometimes, but sometimes mosquitoes get used to the fan also. You see, they also, sometimes, that is one way, if you have a fan. Then all people don't have fans, so there are other problems associated.
I think this comes to the point, like for example, monks have a fan, yeah? It's kind of, they will for preaching and so on.
Yes,
these could be quite practical things, you know, rather than having
just whacking the fellow.
Yeah, because in those situations you can use it kind of, you know, bugs and so on, you know. I mean, I was just thinking about it.
Venerable Sir, it's also said that if you have developed to a very high extent, Buddhima, this metta, the practice of metta, sometimes the mosquitoes may not be that hostile to you. You see?
Yeah, that's so actually come to a point. Remember that when there is a kind of Kanda Parita in the book of protection, and there the story says that the Buddhist monks went to meditate to a forest, and they were, I think one was...
They were disturbed.
They were disturbed, and also in another occasion, snakes bit the monk, and it says that, you know, you have to have a compassion to the snakes, and the Buddha says that if you have a compassion, they will not bite you. So the metta and the loving kindness has a kind of protective device, and if you have really genuinely care for others, in return they care for you. So it's kind of it's not a one-way traffic, it's a two-way traffic, the mutual way. So as you said, Mr. Kurupu said, you know, kind of mosquitoes also may sense that, you know.
When you are talking about this aspect, Venerable Sir, what came to my mind, there was a meditating monk, a foreigner, living in Hambantota side, down south. And when he was in the forest, he was a forest meditating monk. And when he used to pass by, snakes get to a side, and they say they were watching him, but not harming. Of course, he has developed mentally to a very, very high degree. Some think that he has even reached the states of sainthood, you see. So that is also a characteristic. But better not to go to experiment too much, because if you are not developed,
but that illustration helps us to understand the Buddha's life. We know that the Buddha was protected by Ajapala, the snake, you know, kind of, you know, sometimes even as a child looking at that image is quite scary, and see that, you know, the snake is above the Buddha's head.
And even the Nalagiri story,
That's
where
right.
actually, exactly.
Elephant. So maybe this is one way that they feel like the Buddha is harmless, and Buddha is harmless, so they feel kind of more affinity. And I think that those stories are quite common with regard to forest monks, you know, who go to remote parts of the forest and for meditation, and they are usually protected by various animals. And Buddha's life itself, that when he went to Parileya and so on, you know, we see that, you know, he was given food by the monkey, and you know, the elephant protected the Buddha, and all these stories, you know, sometimes it looks like more rhetoric and more mythological, but I think if you think about our relations with a cat, our relations with a dog, you know, or pet.
Those are pet animals.
Yeah, but thing is that kind of the relation that you build with them, they have a special relationship. They recognize the boss, you know, they recognize the person who feed you. So you see that there's a kind of really interest relationship. It's not only human beings that can you educate, but the animals also get educated and they get used to it. I mean, the elephant is a good example, you know, the way they kind of interact with you.
True enough. And in fact, I would like to ask you, sir, now when we consider metta, it cannot only be confined into bhavana or meditation. Sometimes people might think when we say the word metta itself, it's all about bhavana or meditation. But it's not that. We can actually start practicing it while we do our day-to-day activities perhaps. So I would like to ask you, sir, now how can a person actually incorporate this into their day-to-day activities, and how can they actually realize this during their lives itself?
That's a very good position that you took, Buddhima, that this great quality of metta should not be confined only to formal bhavana. Formal bhavana means you sit in some place. Generally you sit in a posture, you see, lotus posture or semi-lotus posture or any other comfortable position where you keep the back erect. But that doesn't mean that you must confine yourself to that. But it is said, Venerable Sir, that when you go and practice it as a bhavana in a formal position, that will be helpful for you. When you extend it to practice more or less at all times of the day, but or most of the times of the day, that is helpful. Now here in practicing in daily life Buddhima, one of the most important aspects is sati, or mindfulness. Whenever you are moving away from goodwill towards others, when you are getting angry with people, when people harm you, you generally have an attitude of ill will towards them. So then you must become aware, now I am extending hatred or ill will towards a person who has harmed me. Then that itself will tend to bring down your hatred, to evaporate it to some extent, the knowledge that you are going in a wrong direction, and then you take the corrective action. Now in corrective action, Venerable Sir, there are many you could take. You can think of the evils, the evils of not extending metta. Which metta is the counter to hatred and ill will, a very bad emotion, a very unwholesome emotion that we have, which is harmful to ourselves, because we are not happy. When we are in a mood of anger or hatred, we are certainly not happy, we are unhappy. So therefore, we have to, that itself is an inducement for it. And another one thing I can mention, there are several, is that we can think that all of us are in samsara, Venerable Sir. We are all subject to dukkha. Even the persons who are doing very well, in high positions, with all the wealth, even they are subject to dukkha. They get headaches, they get stomach troubles, they fall ill. Even if they don't fall ill, their close kith and kin fall ill, and you are disturbed, you are mentally anxious. So there is dukkha all the way. So we relate to them as we are all in the same boat. We are going in samsara with all its unsatisfactory features. And when we think of the fact that we are going to pass away after some time, the person towards whom you have ill will is also going to pass away, you are also going to pass away. So what is this big exercise in having these thoughts of ill will and hatred, which will only make you unhappy?
You know, I think Mr. Krupa, you have mentioned various aspects of this issue that we are discussing. I will pick up one of the things that you mentioned very early. I mean, you mentioned about the posture, you know, how you should practice Metta Bhavana, and you mentioned few things, but like Karani Metta Sutta and other places, at least it's recognized 4 postures. You know, you can do it while walking, sitting, sleeping, or in a lotus position.
Even you are mindful also of these 4 postures.
Exactly.
Walking, sitting, standing, and lying down.
Lying down. And so the metta is a kind of more very transportable, very portable exercise. So you could do
at any time you could practice.
Any time you could do it, and this is actually value, because what we have to as Buddhists to think about how Buddhism can be helpful today, and how Buddhism can be helpful to us, to me. And I think if you think about it, I think if we can use a practice day to day, as you said that mindfulness, sati, you know, with mindfulness, and if you kind of have a caring attitude to yourself and others and all the animals, and you could do it at all moments. Sometimes you could do it even without making a special effort. So that's the beauty of the Metta Bhavana, because that can be a kind of use at any circumstance, any way, and it can be a kind of permanent virtue in your life. So that's I think the beauty of that meditation, because if you think about other meditations like in breath and out breath and so on, they need a special focus. Your breath in the nose or your stomach or something like that. You know, you need a kind of important that your physical behavior, but whereas metta, anybody could do it. Even a sick person lying on the bed could do it. And
now, Venerable Sir, the Buddha mentioned the posture only for anapanasati or breath meditation. For other meditations, he didn't give a posture. But when we are in formal meditation, Buddhika, we have found that it is very convenient for us to get into that posture. But as Honorable Monk mentioned, you see, this can be practiced at any time, the metta. And it is also said, Venerable Sir, that the Buddha had given this example and said that the person towards whom you are extending hatred or ill will, in the long process of samsara, the long journey we have been going through in samsara, would have been one of our closest relations in some birth in the past. Closest relation defined as, you can't even imagine it, that brother, sister, father, mother, and so on. So it is a very close relationship. You can think of that, although we are angry with him now, you see, we have in our sansaric journey, we have been close associates.
So
exactly, Venerable. Actually, with that, something else comes into my mind. Actually, when we consider about metta or loving kindness, the unboundless or unconditional love towards beings, when we consider, the mother's love is very much important. And I can quote this incident where I've actually read in a book. There's this particular student, actually, sir, who goes home after school, and then the mother says him, saying that you don't do any housework and you don't look after the brother and so much of things. And finally what happens is the student gets a paper and he does all this work actually, whatever the work that the mother gives him, let's say looking after the brother or arranging the room or doing the homework and completing the classwork and all this work. Actually the student does all this, but finally what he does is he makes a list and he prepares a pay sheet for the mother, asking that the mother has to a bill for the mother, asking the mother has to pay it for him. And then later on what the mother does is she comes and she explains him what unconditional love, when we consider a mother's love actually, for all the 9 months I've been bearing you inside me, and that is free of charge, and for all the nights I've been awake with you when you were sick or maybe when you were ill and all that is free of charge, and for all the hours that I've been with you in school until your class finishes, all that is free of charge. So this is the kind of unconditional love when we consider the mother's love. I think that's a very good example to explain loving kindness when we consider, isn't it, Venerable?
Yeah, I think
it is also said in the Karaniya Metta Sutta, and one verse, Venerable Sir, refers particularly toward a mother. The mother, the protection that a mother will give to the only son. You see, in the same way we must give. So it's a very tall order, Venerables. The same way you are expected to give protection and love and kindness to all living beings. That is the ideal. But we have to march along that path. You are going to ask something.
Yeah, I think what is important is we have to ask why this imagery of a mother and the mother and the only child. You know, it is in the verse 7 in the Karaniya Metta Sutta. It says, just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so let one cultivate a boundless love towards all beings. And we have to ask why this kind of imagery is taken into the text. I think we have to ask it. Probably the point that the text try to make is that the nature of delicate type of love and the, a kind of affection that cannot be put into words, the kind of caring attitude that go beyond the limits, because this relationship, if as a mother,
and that is also kind of selfless.
Selfless, selfless, boundless, and also it's kind of very the issue of, there are two issues in ethics and so on. Kind of idea is that certain activities that we do are selfish or kind of self-interest. Self-centered and self-interest. And then the other type of activities that do are not self-centered but centered on others, so which is called altruistic. Now, if you look at this example, like one mother and her only child and the love there, can we call it as a self-centered love, or is it a completely selfless love? This is the kind of delicate matter.
That is why perhaps the Sutta gives that particular example of a mother's love for a only son, it is mentioned. Because in the Buddha's time, generally people had a prejudice in favor of sons, which is fortunately dying now. You see?
Actually, in this translation, in the original is a mata yata niyam puttang. It is puttang is actually, as you rightly said, it the singular, masculine singular. So but in the English translation, this Venerable Piyadasi translation, and it's kind of changes to child, I think, which is accurate, I think. So in the original, when they use the word putta, it's like the word man. In the English writing we use the man.
Is that the way you interpret Pali?
At least it's translated here. Venerable Piyadasi has translated it
but
as
generally putta means
son. So, but thing is that like the English word man, until recent time.
Man covers both sexes.
Yeah, exactly. And so the putta also could be taken in that sense. Because of course in the Hindu Brahmanic thought, having a male child is very important. But in this case, I think we can broadly interpret it.
And it won't affect very much, Venerable Sir, also, but the important thing is the only child.
Only
because
child,
when you
yeah.
have only child, you have a greater
Yeah.
amount of affection and care.
Yeah. But thing is that we could take it broadly. I think Venerable Piyadasi takes it as
Child.
only child, and which is gender neutral. It could be a male or female. I think in terms of mother's love, it doesn't make a difference whether the child is a male or female, because from the mother's point of view, the matter is that having a baby is the most important one. Yeah. Of course, there will be other issues about whether the lineage and all those things.
Of course, another stanza also puts it this way. It says that those visible and invisible,
Yeah.
those near and far, those born and those still to be born, may all beings be well and happy. Very significant that it covers not only the present people who are living, but those who are going to be born in the future. All of them are covered.
Yeah.
Exactly, Venerable Sir. Actually, continuation of the story, finally what happens is the student, this child realizes what the mother says, the unconditional, unbound love of the mother, and finally he brings the paper and he comes and says, paid in full. So that is the point, the child actually realizes
That is the moral of the story.
And also there is a problem there, isn't it? From a Buddhist point of view, the example that you gave, you know, the mother and the son, because son is thinking business terms, in commercial terms, and very much, you know, today's materialistic world, and you can say it's like a bank balance. You know, you mother do something for you, you can pay it back, and it's very unreligious, you know, unhuman or inhuman, because the attitude the son is that everything can be measured by wealth, the money, and that's a problem of our society, I think.
True enough, Venerable Sir, because nowadays people think that money can buy everything. That is and people think money can buy happiness as well. But this is not the case, and we are always talking about eternal happiness. And people actually, this is the society, kind of society where people run towards materialistic attainment, where spiritual gainment needs to be given the very first place. So
and this was the conflict there. Whereas, I mean, this is a conflict that come to we as Buddhists, but also a conflict that we have any human or any religious person, because certain, like any religion, but in particular Buddhism, if you think about the metta bhavana and so on, all of these are spoken of valuable things in non-material terms. You know, all of things are talked about as virtues. You know, these is the way how you can improve and become a better person, and they cannot be measured by rupees or dollars or pounds or whatever.
True,
you know,
but the Venerable Sir, but the Buddha also sometimes, in Buddha's time also, this material aspect was used sometimes to put people in the correct direction. I think it was Anathapindika's son. I think, but I am not sure. It was somebody who was very devoted to the Buddha, his son. He could never persuade him to come and listen to a sermon of the Buddha. So he offered him, I will give you so much of gold if you come and listen to the Buddha. So he said, all right.
in terms of persuasion, that
Persuasion and the money,
Exactly.
the gold. You know, so he thought he will just go and just mark time there and collect the gold. But when he was listening to the Buddha, he got absorbed. He got absorbed with what the Buddha was saying, and then he was put in a correct direction. So the Buddha's time, various techniques were used, you see, for good advantage. So sometimes a person who is very materially minded, sometimes that can be a carrot that you can do to get the person involved in the Dhamma.
yeah, and from the Buddhist point of view, that kind of things, we call it skill in means or upaya kaushalya. That means the Buddha is characterized as a person who is able to read other people's minds. You know, able to read other people's mind, and this person is greedy. You know, this person has lust. You know, this has a delusion and like that. So this is a very important part of meditation. The meditation teacher should be able to understand it. So in the example there, the young man kind of becoming religious or tend to be religious or even making a volition to see the Buddha is a kind of, as you said, a carrot, you know, kind of initial entry. So initially, because of the material interest, come to listen, and then he or she discovers something much more precious. So the religious path that we cultivated in this text is go in the kind of gradual path, you know, recognize people's weaknesses or drawbacks. Like the gold is a drawback, you know, we tend to like it. Of course we say that we don't like it, but nevertheless we like to hoard. So this is kind of being human. And now the Buddhism trend to kind of manage it. Buddhism say that this is...
Or sometimes try to take advantage.
Advantage.
Or that to put a person on the correct direction.
The correct
Now
direction.
Buddhima, you were also mentioning about the practice of formal metta meditation. And you quoted from Buddha Ghosha, Venerable Buddha Ghosha, outstanding commentator on the Dhamma, where he had said to commence with yourself. And then go to a person towards whom you have goodwill, to a neutral person, and last to a person that you have ill will. Now this is also psychologically a very good approach, Venerable Sir, because if you start extending metta straight away to a person whom you hate or consider your enemy, it will not be a difficult task. So it's a gradual process. You are starting with yourself. May I be well and happy. And then go on to respected persons you love, neutral persons, and eventually the mind gets prepared and then goes into towards persons you dislike.
And also here I think the important thing is this gradual practice has a starting point. The starting point is nobody else other than you. You know, because that's the interesting thing. Because
and you can compare yourself with others also.
Exactly.
Because you like to be happy.
Yeah.
In the same way, others also like to be happy. Even animals like to be happy.
Yeah. And also this is the kind of the starting point, the emphasis on you has a very important implication from Buddhist terms. Because if you think about that, if you want to attain enlightenment, you know, we have to strive to go there, because nobody else is going to grant it. Yeah. So that's the beauty of Buddhism. You know, you begin it and then the end also within you. So Buddha says that, you know, the liberation is not somewhere outside, within your body, in this life, in this body. So the metta bhavana, I think rightly seems to kind of integrate all these aspects. You know, it starts with you and then it proceeds. And then also it's an important factor that if you do not care about yourself, and if you do not care about your success, and if you do not care about to improve yourself, then it's less likely to think that that person will care about anybody else.
That's true.
You know, whether it
That is very correct. Very correct.
whether it's a wife or parents or teachers or one's religion or whatever. So here, important recognition that we have to kind of very important that people first have affection, kindness to oneself. You know, to one's understand that we have a responsibility, we have a duty, and we have ability, and we have certain ambitions, and we can change our life and improve. And that I think recognized as a meditation practice, as a fundamental level, this metta bhavana.
And that is very true, Venerable Sir, Buddhima also, that the Buddha has mentioned this and said, there is a tendency among some to be always concerned about others, which is a good thing. But also you must be concerned about yourself, that your progress, you must look after your health. While helping others to be in good health, you must look after your health. So the Buddha emphasized that you must look after yourself as well as others.
Yeah, it should be both sides should be present. Like not exclusively,
That's right.
like exclusively think about the welfare of others and exclusively.
It should be inclusive.
Exactly,
Not
and what Buddhism says that you should not be selfish, but also you should not be 100% selfless, because there should be
We should manage it in a
manage
proper
the
way.
two.
You have to think of your welfare also.
Yeah, it that's the beauty of Buddhism, which I think which makes sense why Buddhism is called middle path.
Yeah.
Because rather than having extreme view,
There's a correct balance.
and also that balance lies on you. See, nobody is going to give you a scale and ask you to kind of gauge it, because it's kind of very independent, and that's the difficulty as well as freedom in Buddhism, because nobody is going to judge you, Nobody is going to measure you. Nobody is going to punish you. And individual person has the responsibility, freedom, and the free will to do it. And that's actually Buddhism. Metta Bhavana could be the starting point of correcting these extremes of selfishness and selflessness. So it should be a kind of moderate middle ground.
Exactly, Venerable Sir. Actually, what you mentioned, we need to have a starting point. We need to start somewhere, definitely. That is very much important. Starting within ourselves, and then we need to start practicing it for the others as well, because there are no elevators for success. We need to take up the stairs. We need to start somewhere. So that is very much important. And on the other hand, Venerable Sir, when I consider the Visuddhi Magga, it mentions about the evils of hatred. So I would like to ask you, how can we eradicate these evils of hatred, and how can we realize the eternal bliss nirvana through the practice of metta, or rather the loving kindness, as we are discussing right now?
I think the issue of love and hatred, these are polarities. And actually in the higher way of thinking, probably these duality disappear. If we are enlightened, we will not characterize certainly completely as evil. Like for example, Devadatta as completely evil, and so the good and evil is a kind of relative terms. Kind of even a certain good actions, like for example, if you feed the monks just for your own benefit, and it
for your
would be,
own merit.
Yeah, only for your merit, and also to be reborn in Tavatin, so somewhere heaven or something. That kind of that defeat the purpose. So the good or negative, they are relative terms. Of course, there are obvious differences, kind of goodness and hatred. Now the beauty of Buddhism is say that the good side is visible when there are negative side. So when there are a lot of negative energy, you could see how the positive energy works. So the good and evil in Buddhism, they are relative terms. And in the Buddhist tradition, it usually says that when the arahants, when you become arahant, they lose the sense of good and evil, or punya papa, whereas they are skillful. It's called kusala, and they are skillful of knowing. So this kind of this division of love and hatred is somewhat eternal, because they are projection. And actually, once we do not recognize the real nature, we can easily, even our good thoughts could be hatred oriented. Like say for example, somebody uses a bad word or abuses us, and in return, if we also continue using the abusive word, then actually we become the victim. And there's a good example in the Saddharma Ratnavali, the story of Kali, and this is a kind of commentary, Buddha Ghosa's commentary, and it was written by the 13th century by Dharmasena Thera. And in the Saddharma Ratnavali, it clearly says, it's a story about abortion, a story of abortion, and it basically says that the original woman who killed the baby of the pregnant woman actually became very innocent, but the victim in the earlier situation became actually the demon. So Mr. Kurupa earlier mentioned that we can go in the samsara in various lifestyles, and we do not know where we'll end up. But that story kind of in terms of karma and so on, it clearly says that the intention to take revenge, when the pregnant woman died at the childbirth because the other woman who was there, who was jealous, wanted to kill the baby, and she dies with the kind of thought of revenge, and she goes on the samsara taking hatred. And now it's a good example that hatred this is the commentary to the verse of the Nahi Verena Verani Sammantita Puchatana. The kind of the hatred is never feast by hatred, it's an eternal law. And it has come
but
through
by love.
And so the point is the revenge or hatred or negative quality can never resolve the problem, and only with loving kindness opposite can be done. So the metta has an importance in that respect. You know, and out of the four probably, out of the four Brahma Vihara, probably metta, probably this explains why it begins with metta rather than anything else. And its importance and its kind of a fundamental value of undoing things, undoing negative cycle.
Now, Buddhima, you are asking the question about overcoming ill will and hate. Now, that is the opposite of metta. And you were saying, how can we do it? Of course, one of the greatest liabilities is you yourself, as I mentioned earlier, you are unhappy. You are in an unhappy state of mind. So, that should be an incentive for you to develop this great quality of metta. And if persons are harmful to you, the quality you should extend to them is not hatred or ill will, but compassion. If you think that they are going in the wrong direction, that they cannot be persuaded to go in the right direction, rather than ill will, you have to have compassion and have the sincere wish that they will reform themselves as time goes on. So, that is why we also emphasize the fact that even criminals, an effort should be made to reform them, Venerable Sir, rather than only punishing. Punishing is important, we won't say punishing is not important, but that should not be the be all and end all in reacting to a criminal. While giving a punishment, at the same time an effort should be made to put them in the right direction.
True enough, sir. Actually, the golden path is right before us, and it is our duty to take the path, because Lord Buddha has mentioned the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a golden path that is set before us. So actually, adding to what you mentioned, sir, when we consider the society, as I mentioned earlier, in a society where people run for materialistic gainment and people actually compete in the society for certain things to be achieved. And in a society like this, sir, when something even small goes wrong, people cultivate anger towards themselves as well as towards the other people. So how can we actually tolerate this, and how can we actually develop metta or loving kindness and eradicate this anger that people develop within themselves?
As I am mentioning earlier, the best tool that we have is the development of sati, mindfulness.
Being aware
of this development, and also what we mentioned earlier, that we can think that we are all in the same boat, we are in samsara, we are subject to dukkha, the unsatisfactory nature of life. And what is the whole purpose of having ill will and hatred when that is damaging to you here and now, at the moment you are having unpleasant feeling, and also it will not be good for you for the future. And one of the ways we can overcome is by certain small acts, Buddhima, small acts, like to show the other person that you have no ill will towards the person. Now, something that is given is that if a person to whom you have ill will, but you are still on talking terms, you are not, you don't look the other way when you see the person, that is going very far. Now see, Venerable Sirs, we must take into consideration that we must become mindful as early as possible, see the dangers of this kind of action, and also some of the positive actions we could take is to show some goodwill towards those who we think harbor ill will towards us. And as sometimes, Venerable Sir, when people meet a person whom they dislike, they sometimes, without going straight towards them, they sidetrack them. They have to move away from them because they don't want to come face to face with them. Now, what an unpleasant thing that is. How much more pleasant, even if the person has harmed you, to give him a smile. A smile will not cost you anything, you see, but it creates goodwill.
But I think it's difficult. I think what happens is, in real situation, if you are not getting along with someone, it's very hard to say even good morning, and you know that you don't agree with those words. So this is the real situation. If you have ill feelings.
So, Venerable Sir, you have to be very sincere in that. If you are developing this quality of metta, and you are starting to develop and extend thoughts of metta to that person, you see, that won't become such a big problem. At least smiling at him for the start, only smiling and just recognizing him, not perhaps engaging in a very talk of goodwill, you see, but then gradually you can build up on that.
I think that the Buddhism recognizes that. Buddhism recognizes that you should be able to come to that level of reconciliation. But the problem is that we are living in a very primitive stage, and we are so bound by the feelings and emotions and opinions and what we heard and so on, and that colors your attitude to other people. And sometimes even before you meet somebody, you already have made assumption, this person is like this, so I should not even talk
So
with
you have to surrender those assumptions.
Exactly.
Suspectingness and
anticipating also,
impatience. Is
I think the ideal way, we have to take individual person as a person, no matter what, as its beginning point, because it's usually, the scientific research usually says that, psychological research says that you make an impression about a person within first 30 seconds.
the first impression is the best impression.
Best impression. And I think also, as individual, as people who want to improve.
But of course, there is this aspect also, Venerable Sir, sometimes the first impressions are wrong. You see, you find when you are associating with a person, that is why it is said in the Dhamma itself, that you must associate with the person fairly closely to make an assessment of things. Now I am reminded, Buddhima, of a story related by Venerable Homagama Kondanja Thera, well-known meditation master, both in Sri Lanka and overseas. Now Venerable Sir, he related this story and he was telling there was a monk. Whatever way he tried to extend goodwill to him, it made no progress. He appears to be hostile to him. Then he was told that there is a layman in a distant place. He said he had specialized in this art of metta. Why won't you go and meet him? So the Venerable monk went there and met him. Then he said, yes, now you have been doing these various things to indicate to him that you have goodwill. Now have you been speaking with others about him and saying that he is very difficult, I am extending metta? But he said, yes, I told the other monks also. He said, you must not go to talk. That itself, when you are talking, there is ill will in you.
Yeah.
You see the moment. You don't think of him at all. If you think of him with compassion. You see. Then he said he tried this. And it worked. You see. So because when you go and tell and all, at that moment there is no goodwill, because you are recollecting the fact that however good you are to him, he is not reacting in the way you would wish.
Yeah. And now I would like to, because we perhaps better how the Pali text, the text in the Tripitaka, sees the value of metta. And now I have this text called Mittanisansa, and it mentions about 11 advantages which come somewhat related with about hatred and so on, and enemy and so on. It says that you have 11 advantages, and a very practical one, because most of the people in our society have a hard time to sleep. Now it says that first advantage of chant in the Karaniya Sutta, practice.
And actually with the busy lifestyles, Venerable Sir, people say that they don't even have time to breathe.
Yeah.
That is the kind of
Yeah.
scenario that
They don't have
exists.
time to do things. To do things which they like, they have the time. You see, to go to restaurants and have food and all, they have time. But for this kind of exercise,
When it comes to spiritual gainment,
That's right.
it is very much little
Yes.
time.
So
that is
the
actually,
point is that the topic that we are talking today, and there are several aspects. We can use the metta as a meditation, and metta also can be seen as a chanting, recitation, and also metta can be used as illustration with pictures and paintings and so on. But perhaps the easiest one for anybody who do not want to go on the meditation is chanting the Karaniya Metta Sutta. Now that's easy one, and you could do it even before you go to sleep.
you are
And
going
now-
about the benefits.
Benefit. But thing is here, it gives you
Sleep.
11 ones, and the first one is very important, because in industrialized world, in advanced world, important problem is people cannot sleep because people take tablets, sleeping tablets. It's very common. I do not take.
No, it's very, very common.
Very common.
No.
And
It's
now,
something common,
now this says, I mean, it's better to try these people, whoever take the tablets, try this out whether this works. But the sutta says that you can sleep well. And it says that you get up well, on time and awake. And that's why it's you need of alarm clock, yeah? And also the other problem is we have nightmares in the night, and he says that you don't see the evil dreams. And then other things like, you know, you are pleasant to the other human beings, and not only that, you are pleasant to non-human beings, and the deities protect you, and the poison, fire and the disasters does not affect you, does not influence you. And then other things like, most important as a meditation, it helps you to concentrate, you know, your mind become more attentive, and like we say, there's awareness and attention. And then ninth one is very important, especially for females but also for males, about the beauty, you know, your face. And it says that countenance becomes serene as a result of practicing loving kindness. And then it says that also the 10 is very important one in the next life. So if you are elderly and if you are very frail and so on, you may want to think about the chant, the Karanima Sutta, because it says that your mind will not be confused. You know, if you die in sleep, perhaps more likely that you will have a better rebirth as a result of having an attentive mind.
Because you are having a purified mind.
Purified mind.
With this development of this quality of metta, it's a purified mind.
Purified mind.
So therefore your destination is likely to be very favorable.
And is secured. And the last one, it talks about that, you know, forget about attaining a higher status like Arahantship, but at least if you have little meditation, and you will be reborn in Brahma world. So here, these 11 lists, you know, we cannot authorize that they work exactly as said, but it also can be said that we cannot completely doubt them. But I think if you chant the Karanima Sutta, it's more likely that you will have some of these benefits. And I think it's a very fascinating account. And now here also, I mean, we came earlier to the discussion about these Brahma Viharas. You know, these Metta and so on, they are called Brahma Viharas. And here also it says that at least if you are not Arahant, you will be reborn in Brahma world. Now the point that I wanted to address is, where is this Brahma world? You know, is it here or is it within us? I think if you think about in authentic term, all these heavens and so on, Buddha has spoken allegorically. And now here it's very clear why they are elevated into a higher status like Brahma world. It says that these are the qualities that improve people and guarantees human perfection. And so the Buddhism here, what you say is that these virtues make this world very happy place, very sane place, you know, kind of healthy place, and a place where people care about each other. So we don't have to necessarily think about, of course you can believe it, but if we practice them, we can create our divine world here. And that's why probably it says it's a divine abode. And these some of the examples, like taking the mother's love for one's own child, and some occasions our descriptions in the text say your parents are God at home. You know, these examples, if we draw it, kind of, you know, we
now
could
whenever sir responding to you, you mentioned about sleep. Now that is very important. Rather than take drugs, you see, drugs also have certain other reactions, unfavorable reactions. Apart from that, Buddhima, drugs also you sometimes can get used to it. So the dosage you might have to go on advancing. But here, if you are having thoughts of metta with you, the more the thoughts are, the more helpful it will be for your sleep, rather than falling. Now with regard to these are things that could be practiced even by non-Buddhists. The reference to Buddhism comes in the last item, which you say, if you do not realize Nibbana, you will be at least born in a Brahma world. So there, Venerable Sir.
But that also can be understood in many terms in Christian and Muslim and Hindu terms. Actually, that mention itself is very useful for them. Because
but the word Nibbana is not. Nibbana is different to what
but
they are.
that also,
Yeah.
we could interpret it different way. I mean, we call it arahant, but people will call sainthood or prophethood or something like that. I mean, we don't have to, I think, put boxes and say this is our box, nobody can get in. But actually what he tried to say is that human perfection is boundless. The perfection is perfection, whether it's a Buddhist or non-Buddhist. And so these labels are our thoughts, our categories.
And here it's liberation.
Yeah.
Nibbana is liberation.
Liberation, yeah.
So even others might have their own concept of liberation. Liberation.
Yeah. So I think it can be adapted. I mean, I don't think we should convert people, but these ideas will not function as obstacles for them to incorporate some of the Buddhist ideas, and so they could.
And you have all these advantages.
Exactly.
Your countenance.
Yeah.
All that is to your
Because
advantage.
think about. I recently I was talking with one young female, and she told me how much it costs to do the hair, 3,000 rupees. This is very, very good illustration. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying is that we spend in the whole Western world, put a lot of stuff on cosmetics, and now it's a big industry. And actually,
it's a very big industry. Very profitable industry.
Profitable industry. And now here, what is fascinating about Buddhism is Buddhism has a very internal view. Rather than decorating outside, you decorate within your own body through your practice.
You need to decorate inside of yourself,
exactly.
not outside.
And that reflects from your outlook. So it's not a show, it's
and
real.
Cosmetics are only external.
Exactly.
But here it is coming from inside, as the Venerable Monk mentioned.
True.
It is coming from inside. And it is also mentioned, Venerable Sir, that sometimes when persons go into deep meditation, and sometimes in this meditation classes, and when they come off, their countenance look much more pleasing than they normally are.
Yeah, is it the Goenkas inside meditation, when it was held in Bihar jail, the prisoners, 10,000 or so, who participate in this in-breath meditation in 10 days, you could see in the film from the beginning that their faces were very rough, but after 3 days you could see a little bit radiant come in these faces, and they are completely transformed. And so I think it's real. I mean, whatever people may say, if you practice these things, it really reflects on
you will be able to observe
the changes.
The changes for
That's
the
the
good.
amazing fact when it comes to
for the
Buddhism.
good.
Yes.
And you were mentioning about prisons, and that's a great thing that India did. One commissioner of prisons who was in charge of a large prison, a lady, introduced meditation. Beg your pardon?
Bihar jail. It's a Bihar jail.
Yes, I think she came to Sri Lanka also. And she did some meditation classes here, but what progress there is on that, I don't know.
Nowadays, in Sri Lankan prisons, there are monks involved in meditation sessions, and so I think
that's very good.
They are doing it, I think we need a little bit more training to do this, because we have to do it professional manner. You cannot just go and...
Because it is different to conducting a normal meditation class. When you are dealing with persons who have had a criminal record, I think you have to be a little more sophisticated and cater to that.
And also the point is, the prisoners understand the value of Buddhist teaching more than anybody else, because the message of Buddhism is that we are in a cage, we are in an eternal prison, and Buddhism says that we want to get out, we want to liberate ourselves. Now, the person who is in the prison can see the fence.
He can appreciate it.
He can appreciate, and the meditation enables them to free themselves psychologically, internally, and that's liberation on earth. So the prisoners can understand it more clearly than anybody else. So the Buddhist message, meditation has a real value for such situations.
Exactly, Venerable Sir. And finally, before winding up, I would like to ask you, sir, in short, if you mind tell us, now Karaniya Metta Sutta is something that we practice even starting off from the smaller children itself, and they actually know what it is. So how can we actually practice Metta and achieve this highest state, the highest bliss, Nirvana? In short, if you mind mention.
Yes, as we mentioned in our course of our discussion, Buddhima, of course there is the formal meditation that is very helpful, but as we mentioned, that alone is not enough, because some people think that they meditate for half an hour or 1 hour including metta and they have done their job for the day, but that is not so, because observers say these people are meditating, but we don't see any change in their character. They are getting angry in the normal way, it is not getting reduced, it is the same way. In other ways also their selfishness, thinking of themselves, they are not improving. So therefore they also say this is useless thing, this meditating. Here they are meditating 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, but no change. So therefore we have to have thoughts of metta throughout the day, but it is not possible to do that at the start, it will take a long time, but as often as possible we must be mindful of the importance of metta, and when we are getting away from metta, be conscious of it and correct ourselves.
If you truly love yourself, you will truly love another, and of course if you truly love yourself, you will never harm another. And it's been a great discussion today about metta and loving kindness. So I would like to thank Venerable Dr. Migalle Mahinda Thera and Raja Kurupu sir for joining us today, and it's been a great discussion once again. And with that, would like to remind you all that you can definitely contact us and of course send in your queries to us through beyondthevision.tv@gmail.com. That is the email address that's open out for you all, and definitely you can send in your suggestions and we will take them forward in our future discussions as well. And may the noble triple gem bless you all. Samma Sambuddha Saranai.